Hey, not much to add today. Be a lot of the same as yesterday. Getting out again into our mental jog through, neck up type training with the guys to keep them mentally sharp. We'll get into a little bit of individual, and then we have a young guy period to end it again to get off the field and end our second day of Mandatory Minicamp. And with that, open up questions.
We talked a little bit about Jalen Walker, and I know you're very high in his football IQ and son of a coach and all that stuff, but it's been pretty apparent that athletically and traits-wise, he's pretty impressive out there from what we've seen. What have you seen?
A lot of the same. When you drafted him, you talked about his versatility, you talked about his ability to rush. There's no secret. We were in the mood and in the mode of finding pass rush for our team, different versions of it. Just so happened we got a Georgia Bulldog to be able to come in here and help us do those things, and he's been in here showing us exactly what he's shown us in his college tape, the human, the character, the person, the player, the all-in mentality. He has like those captain-like traits, and like when you first meet him, you get that feel, you get that vibe from him, and he'll be one of those guys. You never want to put too much on a player, particularly a young player, but he'll be one of those guys that you can tell is going to lead us in the future.
You were pretty clear a few weeks ago when you said that there's intention about all four of those top draft picks playing quite a bit.
Yes.
In 2025.
Yes,
Now that you've had them for a few weeks, are you seeing that kind of develop?
Mark, I am. You got the intentionality of playing these guys. For a bunch of different reasons. They're really good players. They're really sharp. They're really detailed. We'll get into the whole categories of who's starting and who's doing these things. But I think the most important thing is how are they contributing, what their role is going to be, and having real clear-cut role definition for those guys and letting them go out there and earn it, right? You never want to give anybody anything in our profession, and getting those guys in the grass and letting them just kind of stack these blocks as we go. Right now, we are not into the physical form, the fashion of what we do. So that's very hard to name people that starters when you talk about those things. But you can see the traits and what you want, teach them how to practice, how you go about your business in order for us to come back, 5 weeks from now, ready to throw a great training camp and give these guys the best opportunity to go out there and do those things. So, we'll have more answers then, but it's definitely looking and trending in the right direction.
And then just on Pierce, has anything surprised you or impressed you since he's been here that you maybe didn't know before?
It's hard to say surprise because of the amount of detail that I've gotten from our whole scouting department and all the guys that's going out on the road to really get the information for us and be able to bring it back and then to take you to it sometimes. And he was one of the guys that we dug into a bunch and really, developed that relationship and fell in love with the guy and who he is, the honesty, the truth teller that he is. And so being around him, it's been a lot of what I thought and what I've expected. So been really surprised at his willingness to really collaborate with the people that we hooked him up, whether it's been strength coach, whether it's been nutrition, really his buy-in, really smart, sharp, articulate guy, asked a lot of questions. One of those guys is going to be very intentional about how he speaks to you. So when he's talking to you, he's going to talk direct. He's going to look you in the eye. Probably why he's not great in these type of settings. These settings, there's too many people, too many eyes on them. But when you are with them, intentional, direct, you get the best out of them.
When it comes to what you're talking about, this time period is neck up. It's not physical, and you don't really get to see the implementation of Jeff Ulbricht's scheme. Hardly at all, especially when you consider what guys are saying in this attack style front is what he's implementing. What does that mean to you? What type of descriptions does that type of front implement?
Absolutely nothing right now,
Right,
because right now is a teaching process. It's adding, it's formulating what we want to do and how we want to do it. At the end of the day, it's about how can we get to the pass rusher better, right? And that's going to change how we look on the defense just in general. So, Jeff brings detail. Jeff brings style of play. Jeff brings all of these different things that he's able to perform in front of that room, which I love and which we've been a part of together for a very long time. So, these guys formulating our system and how we want to do it and when we want to implement the attack front, when we want to implement, whether we play a 4-hour and do some of the different things that we've done in the past from all the different walks of life that we've been on, I think is very important. And I think it's very important to find out being really intentional when you want to use all of those things. And I think that's what we're doing right now as a defense. And it's kind of learning every single day and getting better every single day on defense. And I'm loving what they got going on.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the process of marrying philosophies within this defensive staff and your own kind of spin on things, along with Jeff, along with the guys who he brought in and the guys that y'all retained?
So it's kind of less philosophy because the philosophy is really similar. It's probably more some of the things that you talked about, some of the things that he had success with, that he was able to do with the Jets and bring back, some of the things that we had success with in LA and been able to implement and talk to him about, some of the coverage concepts, some of the attack front, some of everything that we're talking about, kind of binding all those things together and finding different ways to formulate our language, right? Because like that's the most important thing. If you can get everybody on the same language and speaking that way and knowing exactly what it is, what your responsibility is, when that word is said, I think that's critical because that lets everybody else across the board know exactly what you're doing. So like bonding those languages, getting those things together, finding out when to use the attack front, what means use the attack front, what doesn't, what dictates the term when we're talking normal D&D, what dictates the term when we're talking about some of these change downs or pass downs, what dictates the term when we're talking about some of the situational football thoughts, and getting these guys going to believe and know exactly what we want to get done. So that's why the neck up part for these guys right now is so important because we're going to stress the physical when we get to training camp.
Raheem, how much do you allow yourself to go in the library or not in the library, but in the laboratory?
Sure.
And start mixing things up and start looking at stuff on the whiteboard and saying, okay, Floyd's here, Pierce is here, Jalen's here, Caden's here.
Yes. That's really the most fun part of this time is like kind of like, you know, being real visual when you're at the house. Like the weekends, a lot of times that happens because right now I'm like cop, right? Slow down, back off, speed up, and Indy. You know, so I'm a police officer most of the week, and then when you get a chance to go home and you get a chance to watch it on tape, those are the things that happen. You know, the vision of people being in different spots. Some of that versatility that we talked about, the roles that people can play and how you can implement those things, and then going to pull from different packages and to be able to add. And it's ongoing, you know, particularly when you're in the room with those guys, either after practice, before practice, whatever the case may be, when we're just talking about how we want to attack the day and a few things that we got planned for today or whatever that day is. So all of those things happen a lot. For myself, they happen at home, primarily right now during the weekends. They'll happen a lot over the next 5 weeks when you get a chance to go sit by yourself and take some of that stuff home and study and look at it and really be detailed and look at it again, and not just as to looking at what Pierce is doing or Jalen Walker or whoever you're looking at individually. You kind of look at it from a holistic view on what all of these things can look like when you put them together.
Along those lines, Divine Diablo is a guy who I know you guys like coming out. How have you seen him kind of integrating himself into this defensive unit, and what can he provide?
His athleticism stands out. It's been unique. His length stands out, which has been unique. And really, you know, him keying and diagnosing behind the ball, probably a lot better than we thought. And I'm really fired up to see that. And really, again, man, once you get into training camp, you get a chance to see some of the physical tools that you loved on tape come to life. And he's done such a nice job of putting his role and putting his stamp on it. Him and Caden has developed a really nice, calm, demeanor linebacker relationship, which is very important. You know, those guys being your quarterback of the defense. Those guys both have shown like they're capable of either one of them being a green dot, which you don't know about a person until you're around them because of their style of play. You know, some guys don't like the green dot because they like to just go ham, talk a little trash across the ball, right? Some guys like to lead in that cerebral world, and these two guys are both in that cerebral type of world that they play the game, again, from the neck up. But I've been really pleased with what he's done, Divine. I've been really pleased with the character, really pleased in how he's fit into our football team. I've been really pleased how our locker room has accepted him and brought him in and really embraced him, and it's been fun to watch those guys.
He's a guy who hasn't been a lifelong linebacker, so
Sure.
Are you surprised at all that he is that kind of far ahead in terms of where he is mentally?
I'm not, man. It's funny, like, because we did this a couple years ago when they were coming out. I believe it was him and Jamie, and that came out, and they were the two safety transfers and going to linebacker. And I believe Brick and I were here together when those guys were coming out. We talked about it, and everybody evaluated them. I hate to say me and Brick. The whole league evaluated him as linebackers, so it's like it'd be hard-pressed for me to say that I'm shocked to see his development because, you know, like, there's some really good teachers in the National Football League, and when you get these guys and they get those visions, and then you get them in the right spots and the right timing, certain things come to life, and it's just coming to life with them.
Coach, speaking to the mental and physical side for rookies like Jalen and James, you know, when they go from college football season ending to, you know, combine prep, all that kind of stuff, to rookie minicamp and then regular minicamp and then training camp eventually, how do you kind of navigate, you know, what I don't want to call it snap count, but, making sure that they're not, I guess, overworked is not the right term, but
Yeah, you're right.
kind of just getting ready for that new process of working for, being NFL defense versus college and all that prep that they've been having to do that maybe veterans weren't doing.
100%. It's really cool, man, because like we got this player performance team down there, and I'm sure you guys have talked to them. Whether you talk to Josh Nelson, whether you talk to John Griffin, whether you talk to Paul Constantine, whether you talk to Eric, any of those guys down there, that's what we consistently think about. And it's some of the reasons when you guys give me questions. I've seen James working off on the side today, and Jalen was working with the team. It's like you are managing that workload. You are managing what you feel you don't have a great grasp on yet. And how do you get the best version of that is find out what they're doing without putting them in stressors where they prevent themselves or make themselves susceptible to injury. So let's get them in the best version of themselves to be able to get out there and push them to the limit where you can bring them back or you can push them more, but you got some real analytical data on these really smart people's desks that can come talk to me about all of those different things. So like that is definitely a part of right now on how you manage people, how you find out about them. How do you give them the best? How do you get the best version of them heading into training camp? So now you can figure out what you can get from the season. And I think we got some of the best people in the world doing it for us. And I really enjoy the conversations. I really enjoy the studies. I really enjoy the scientific data that goes behind it to find out how much we can push these guys.
More of a broad question, but from the beginning of OTAs to now, has there been one player or one position group that has kind of stood out to you or impressed you maybe or makes you feel more confident about where they are?
Allison, like I told you, I'm been a police officer right now, but it's been really impressive just to watch the guys wanting to compete and me having to pull that off. So like to say one particular group stands out would be tough. But my O-line is just a group that's just so bonded and so connected and so well versed. What are you talking about? The age and the wisdom from Jake Matthews to the inspired brunt toughness of a Bergeron, you got it all in that room. And it's really fun to watch those guys be led by Led, Nick Jones, Flats, happy birthday. All of those guys going out there and like really leading that group in their different ways. And like we got a bunch of people up there that love football, that can't wait to go out and get to training camp so we can be physical. And we got a bunch of people up there that are training our guys how to practice at the right appropriate times and what to do and how to do it. They're so tightly connected. I mean, we see them out there doing yoga and stretching and exercises. That group is really connected and is a fun group to watch.
When you break for training camp, kind of what's your message to the guys before they get especially?
Kind of been having some one-offs with a bunch of guys, talking about this 5-week status and what their plans are. Got a bunch of people in the building that's been able to help me with that to make sure we can touch everybody to find out what they're doing, what they're going to plan on doing. And then if there's some people that need some guidance, we can give them some help on what it looks like, whether it be advice to a Michael Penix on what to do and what people have done in the past, being able to sort those guys out to help them to get that kind of information that you don't always get as a coach, right? As a coach is a different break than it is for a player and how they prepare when they come back. So, like, who's better to tell a guy like Michael Penix what he did throughout his career than a Matt Ryan? Who's better to tell some of these guys what they've done to be able to show them examples of what, like, a Grady Jarrett did when you're talking about a young defender, when you're talking about a Brandon Rook, I put them together, a Rook or a Dorlish, right? But, like, all of those things are very important when you're talking about historical evidence of how people did it. And then you got some players on our roster or some coaches on our roster that played like a Lance Schulters, like a Jeff Ulbrich. What was their routine? What was their rhythm? What does Jake Matthew do? Because whatever he's doing, I want to do. Just all those type of things. And that's kind of the most important thing, trying to match these guys up so they can have some type of rhythm and relief, knowing this is not a break for them. This is a get-ready moment. This is a get-ready period. You have to take a small break. You got to enjoy family. But there's a certain part of it that you got to be ready to go when we get back.
We were talking to Mike yesterday.
I got you.
And, sorry, we were talking to Mike yesterday about, and it came up about Bijan, and he said if Bijan touched the ball every play, and the defense knew that Bijan was going to touch the ball every play, there would still be something big that came of it because of the special player that Bijan is. And I know you've talked ad nauseum about Bijan, the player, but when it comes to his ability to make people miss, why is that, or how could that be considered an art form in what he does in his game? Everything
about Bijan is an art form. He is the hardest person on the team to talk about just because he is an Atlanta Falcon. He is everything about that. And his ability to move, his ability to take care of his body, his ability to train, his ability to motivate, his unselfishness, humility, all of those things, his ability to give back in our community. He's such a great player and such a great human. I love being around him. And it's not just him. We got so many people like that, but he like feeds that room, and it goes to Tyler, and Tyler embraces that. And that's another room you can talk about. That's why it's so hard to pick a room, because that running back room with the youth in there and those two guys that are kind of veterans, it's just a beautiful place to be. And it is an art form because of how they move and how they're taught. And it has to be a credit to their coach, Mike Petrie, as well.
Have you ever sat back and gone back and watched Bijan? Is there a moment off the top of your head that you remember
Every
saying,
day.
wow?
Every day. He made a cut in the jog through yesterday, and we almost lost our mind. And it was like, all right, let's go home, you know? And he's a special guy. And he has these real lofty goals, and then you kind of can laugh at him, but like last year he was not comparing himself, but talking about some of the workload that McCaffrey had, and then he went out and did it. And now this year he's talking about some of the mimicking of a Saquon Barkley, and I'm not telling him he can't do it, you know, and I know you guys won't, but he's one of those kind of guys. Like, he's not afraid to put his goals out there, put his thoughts out there, put his beliefs out there in the team and himself, and not afraid to go out there and support it. And that's what's important to us.
Caden Ellis said earlier this offseason that Jeff Ulbrich coaches like he's a linebacker.
Yes.
Do you see that?
He played linebacker, so that's very easy. But I think he's talking about the intentionality of the position, right? Caden, I just talked about with these guys, but like, he has such intentional behaviors in everything he does. Caden is a freak, right? Whether he's rushing the passer, whether he's playing behind the ball, like, he has that Kobe Bryant mentality to get better at something every single day. And he truly means it, and you can feel it in how he prepares and how he practices, how he eats, how he does everything. Like, he's that kind of guy. So, like, when Jeff or Brick, you can't call him Jeff, don't you make a mistake and do that. Brick, when he coaches, he has a real intentionality on what he's coaching that day and what he wants to do and what he wants to get accomplished. And he's not afraid to say it. And he speaks with a high level of clarity to the guys. So I would have to think that's what he's referring to. Because that's what that kind of room is like. You know, it's like almost being in the quarterback room. Like, it's a really intentional day for quarterbacks every day. For wideout, shit, I might just go catch the rock. But it's really intentional for those guys every single day.
Raheem, do you feel like with Brady no longer here, it's kind of Jesse Bates' defense in a way?
Hard to say that, just because we have shared leadership. You know, we just talked about Caden. We just talked about we haven't talked about AJ today. Jesse, we've talked about ad nauseum. But these guys got some shared leadership. You know, I would like to say it's hard to say it's anybody's defense, just like it's hard to say it's anybody's offense. Obviously, the quarterback usually gets that credit, but you're in trouble. Definitely getting fined. Who was that? But for sure, those guys have a leadership group, so to speak, and he would be 100% a part of it, if not the leader of it.
You spoke
Coach, you talked about
last week about how much it benefited Penix to have his locker next to Jesse.
Yes.
I was wondering if in your career you've seen other examples of that in other places where this guy was next to this guy and it really helped him, or maybe there was an intentional putting this guy next to this guy because of that.
I mean, it happens a lot. You know, some of it's public, some of it's not. But it's more like, you know, like the AJ Pierce. It was more like because of the like-mindedness, the worker. You know, not necessarily this elaborate talker. Like, you go around AJ and you talk too much, you're just going to annoy him. And very, very similar to Pierce, right? But when they're talking to each other, it's a different type of work that's happening there. You know, like, you know, you pair great up with anybody, he can develop them, he can grow them. You know, like, it's very intentional to have Chris Lindstrom, you know, next to some of our younger guys, like a Watt and like a Bowman. And like, it's a certain similarities that they have, whether it be cleanliness or whatever the case may be, to not annoy your vet, or to be able to help those guys mature and be able to have real clear visions and models across the ball, on their side of the ball, everywhere, to have that vision of what it looks like to be a pro.
You got to play psychologist a little bit to try to, like, you know, figure that out.
I hate to do that because I'm not qualified, but I'm definitely good enough to pair people up. You know, like, I don't want to hang out with you. You like fighting, and you may start a fight. Just kidding. Just joking. Go ahead, man. You've been cut off twice.
But you talked about the player 5-week plan and what they're going to do during this off period. What is it like from the coach's perspective? What's you guys' next step as you into this 5 week?
It's very similar with the preparation, just not much physical. right? You know, I don't need to make sure I'm in the best shape of my life, but I want to be as sharp as I can be mentally from a standpoint of what we're going to do, from an intention standpoint of how we practice. You know, it starts there because you got to start right from the beginning. What are the installs going to look like, to be really intentional about how we want to have our teaching progression go. Be very intentional about how I want to look and how physical it can be as we get to our joint practices, as we get to our padded practices, as we get to all the things that are really important to us, right? There are some things that we got to figure out what we want to do and who are those people that could be that are going to play in the preseason, because we know there were people that won't be, right? And trying to find out what do we need to see from those guys, how intentional we can be to get those guys out there, how good is it going to feel for all of us, collaborating and speaking with all your coaches, making sure we're all on the same page so when we get back, we're ready to go.
What do you enjoy about the energy that Nate Ollie brings?
Nate Ollie is walking ball of energy. You know, the minute you meet him, the minute you interview him, the minute you do anything with him, is always going to be a certain form of energy. And that comes with a belief in what he's teaching. And when you have that high-level belief and that high-level thought process that you can't be beat because of that, it eventually goes to your players. And eventually what's going to happen with Nate, which happens to all coaches, is that energy goes into your room. And then you eventually pull off. And you watch those guys become a version of you or become your sounding board. And I'm seeing it start to happen already with some of the guys up front.
You just said you're already starting to see it happen.
Yes.
How much do you hope that that really trickles down to those guys up front? 'Cause you need it.
I absolutely hope we play with the energy that Nate coaches with. I pray for that every single night.